I want to talk about a concept, Lisa, called emotional momentum. What emotional momentum is a series of patient outcomes that are related to the process of our new patient experience. So, for example, in this diagram, Lisa, if you look at the horizontal scale, you see the sequence of a new right side patient appointment, initial phone call and scheduling, bringing these patients in first thing in the morning or first thing in the afternoon, giving them a good listening to over the phone. And oftentimes you can discover the four chiefs on the phone. You and I could have a lively conversation about that, I'm sure. Then the next step is going to be the new patient interview. And this is not a review of medical history. This is empathy. This is giving patients the experience of being understood. Not only do you understand them, but they can understand you. It's an introduction. It's a great way, especially with older right side patients, of building confidence. Yeah. Then after the new patient interview, we would do the diagnostics, the examination, and then the post-exam discussion. Then I would think for most dentists, for complex care right side patients, that patient would be dismissed and treatment plans would be developed and the patient would return to the office for the treatment presentation. Or during COVID, we had many practices, Lisa, that did it very successfully via Zoom. Zoom.
In the privacy of their own home with their decision maker right there, it's proved to be very effective.
Absolutely. And you know what? Even if COVID goes away immediately, I think this digital connection that we have right now for treatment presentations would be absolutely fabulous. Those are the steps in the new patient experience. Now, the vertical axis is the positivity of the patient experience from low to high. And what we want to do is gradually build emotional momentum. That is the positivity of the emotional experience of the patient to peak when it matters the most. And when it really matters the most, Lisa, is during treatment presentation and financial arrangements. You want the patient to feel really jazzed about being in your dental office, right? At the moment that you're recommending care and making financial arrangements. I mean, does that make perfect sense or what?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we want to build in what I call emotional momentum. Now, what you see on this escalating lines are the different emotional outcomes that patients can experience. And if you look at the new patient process differently, as opposed to looking at it as to here's what we're going to do, but look at it from the standpoint of here's what the patient will experience. When you look at the new patient process through a different lens, it will look differently to you. And what it does, it gives clues, it gives structure to the new patient process that otherwise may be missed. Like the new patient interview. What is that about? Well, it's about reviewing medical history and making sure you understand the patient's chief complaint and all that kind of stuff. But it's really not about that. What it's about, the bigger picture, is giving the patients a sense of empathy, right? So when we look at the emotional momentum experience, it starts with likability, right? I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? Patients, especially right side patients, they want to be in a likable environment. Well, you may say, well, that's common sense. Well, is it? I mean, think about it. What's likable? What's truly likable, Lisa, about the new patient experience? Study models, how likable are they, right? Full mouth x-rays. How about this one? Periodontal probing. How likable is that, right? You see, the truth of the matter is our procedures during the new patient experience are not likable. They're not likable. I don't care what you say to me. Periodontal probing is not likable. Full mouth x-rays is not likable. And that the only thing that can become really likable is the relationship with the providers. It's the communication piece. It's exactly what you were talking about, Lisa. It's
Yeah.
that connection between the providers in front of the patient. So likability, how do you manifest that? Well, a couple different ways. One way that I always liked before COVID was the meet and greet, where the dentist would literally go into the waiting room and greet the patient. Now we have the meet and greet video, where they can send a patient a meet and greet video. Another way of becoming immediately likable is not to start with diagnostics. Don't start with diagnostics. That's the least likable thing about what you do. Start with that private conversation between the dentist and the patient. That's where the empathy piece comes in. Empathy is about understanding. So if you go into the new patient interview, not with the mindset, well, I need to discover the chief complaint. I always hated that phrase, by the way. What's your complaint, lady?
A couple hundred of them.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. If you go into it with the point of view of, hey, I want to give this patient a good experience of being understood. I want to give them a good listening to. It's like when I call my mother. I tell my wife, Lisa, I said, I'm going to call my mom and give her a good listening to. I don't have to say anything to my mom. Mom, hey, it's your favorite son, Paul. Oh, Paul, did you know? And she'll just go on and on and on and on. And I just, Mom, that's great. Yeah, you bet. And she loves it. Just giving her a sense that she's heard. Dental care is personal. I said that earlier, Lisa. Dental care is personal. And they want it to be personal to you too. Again, I'm not talking about the run-of-the-mill left side patient. I would highly encourage the listeners of this webinar not to discount the types of things that you and I were saying and applying them to every run-of-the-mill left side patient who wants to get in and get out. No, that's not what this webinar is about. This webinar is about how do you do more complex care dentistry? How do you do more of the dentistry you love? And the way you're going to do that is give patients the emotional outcomes that gives them the overwhelming and the immediate sense that they're in the right dental office. That's how you're going to do it. So the first step is become likable. 2, give them a good listening to, give them that empathy.
Paul, if I could share something too,
please.
On a new patient call can make or break any hope of likability. And a new patient call is not something that you just, hi, what's your name, address, and do you have insurance? Thanks. We'll see you next week.
Right.
Because a lot of the success of the patient showing up for the actual in-person visit is based on the likability factor that happened with the telephone techniques and how you collect information on that call by the team member before they even meet the dentist.
You bet. And it's easy for us to sit here and say that, but for the administrative person that's sitting at the front desk, she's got patients checking in and checking out. She's got hygienists that are, changing schedules, or dental assistants that need something, and the phone is ringing, and here comes the UPS guy, and the lab guy's pounding on the door, right? Hey, I get it. There's a lot going on at the front desk. Lisa, if any of this was easy, everybody would be doing it.
Yeah.
Right? This is not easy stuff. But if you look at it differently and plan differently and put in, the 10 or 15% effort in rethinking about what you're doing, then it becomes easier because you're planning for it.
Yeah.
The third step is to give the patient a sense of advocacy. This is so important for that critical care patient. Lisa, you're going to be the patient now. Okay, you're the patient. Okay. And let's say you're 65 years old, and you've been battling periodontal disease for years. You've had a bunch of restorative dentistry in your mouth. Changes in your medical history have really kind of deepened the negative outcomes of your periodontal treatment. You got mobile teeth. You're looking at dentures. You cannot stand the idea of having dentures. Your mother had dentures and it was just awful, and you cringe with the whole idea of it. And you're the new patient, and you come into the office, and the initial phone call was a smash. The person at the front desk, usually a woman, making that handling that call is likable and curious and interested and listens to you well. You come in, the first thing that happens is that you meet me. I'm your dentist, Lisa. You meet me. We have a nice conversation. We learn a little bit about each other's families and where we grew up. And the conversation comes to your teeth, and you start talking to me about, the teeth are loosening. And Dr. O'Malley, your previous dentist, says you're probably going to lose them. And you read an ad about dental implants, and you don't know if it's for you, and you're concerned about the cost. And during this conversation, in many ways, the patient is looking for an advocate. That comes from the Latin, means to guide. Okay, it means to guide. And the environment, the terrain of complex care dentistry is scary for you, Lisa. It's scary for you. It's scary from the standpoint, if you do nothing, you're going to end up with dentures. If you do something, you may end up worse than you are now. You have no idea what any of this costs. Right. And the last thing we want patients to do is to have the worry of whether this care is suitable for you. We don't want the whole unknown of suitability to linger throughout the new patient experience. I want to cross that bridge now, because Lisa, isn't suitability the elephant in the room for you as the patient? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Is this care suitable? Can I afford it? And will it work for me? And are you the providers to do it? And I don't really, and as the patient, you really don't understand a lot that we take for granted that we know. So the role of advocate then becomes really important. And advocacy is about eliminating worry about suitability. And I know, based on my 20 years of experience of treating right side patients and the last 20 some years of coaching other people, is that the role of advocate, dentists have two roles. They have the role of provider and they have the role of advocate. And the provider is the guy that fixes the teeth, that puts in the implants, that does the dental service. But the role of advocate is the advisor. It's the person who advises. And it's like in financial planning, fiduciary financial planners are financial planners that have a special obligation to the patient. So for example, if you're looking to build a new house, they'll look at your budget, they'll look at down payment, they'll look at mortgage, they'll look at land costs, and they'll help you figure out the best kind of house to build. They don't build the house. The financial planner acts as your advocate in understanding what would be the most suitable for you. That's the role of the advocate. And what I'm saying here, during that new patient experience, don't let the provider in the room.
Yeah.
Keep the provider out of the room. Stay in the advocate role. So I may say something to you, Lisa. In our conversation, you may say, and I know this work is expensive, and my husband recently retired, and we get into that kind of conversation. And so by knowing that I don't want the worry of suitability to linger throughout the entire new patient. I don't want you worrying about whether you can afford this and only have it revealed to you at the end like a big surprise. I want to cross this bridge early. So I might say something to you like, well, Lisa, many of my patients are concerned about whether this type of care would fit into their life and fit into their budget. Is that a concern for you? Oh, you'll jump on that like no tomorrow, won't you?
Yeah.
Sure. I'll say, well, Lisa, I can't give you an exact idea, but hearing what you've said about the condition of your teeth and what Dr. O'Malley, your previous dentist, has said to you, if in fact you're going to lose your teeth and we would replace them with teeth that you'd brush right in your mouth, you're probably in the $25,000 to $30,000 range per jaw to do something like that, Lisa. Is that something that you expected? Is that something that would fit? And now what we're going to do is I let the cat out of the bag, haven't I? Now what we're going to do is we're going to have a conversation about what will work and what won't work. And now the conversation goes in the direction that you want it to go. See, I'm not talking about internal pterygoids and central correlation occlusion, but I'm talking to you about things that really would impact you. And ultimately, the conversation says, well, Lisa, I can assure you, whatever direction we decide to go together, we'll do our best to help it fit it within your lifestyle, right? So I want to reassure this is especially important with the complex care patients. Now, many dentists tell me, well, how can you say that? You haven't done an exam. Well, it's easy. I'm a dentist. I could say it.
Well,
I'm
you
not.
also used a range, and if it's lowered, they never complain.
That's right. And I'm just giving them my experience. I'm a guide. I'm an advocate. I'm an advocate. I'm saying cases like yours. I didn't say your case. I said cases like yours, because I don't want this patient freaking out. What happens if you don't do this? Lisa, you come in, you're the patient, you go through all the bells and whistles, you like everybody, and everything is great. Now we get to the case presentation, and I say $40,000. You have no idea it'd be that expensive. And now all of that goodwill that we've built up, what happened? Now you're disappointed, you're angered, you're embarrassed, right? So much of that can be avoided. All right, now we're going to do the exam and the post-exam discussion. And what we want to do during the post-exam discussion is that a lot of complex care patients, Lisa, don't believe that good dental health is possible for them. I've had soft teeth all my life, doc. I've got soft teeth. And hell, doc, I know I'm going to lose them. And Dr. O'Malley says I'm going to lose them. What are we going to do, right? And oftentimes, especially with newer dentists, they pride themselves on telling patients everything that they see wrong with their teeth. You got this, you got this, you got this, you got this. And what I'm going to say is that's negatively framing the conversation. Here's everything that's wrong. And what I would say is learn to positively frame. Positive framing is pointing out all the things that are right about patients' teeth, their medical history, the jaw relationships, the density of the bone, all those things that are far beyond the teeth. Give patients a sense that good dental health is possible for them. Ultimately, we want to inspire people. And notice as we're going through this, I've said very little about patient education, haven't I? I've said very little about that. Why? Because I think patient education has its truest value in two areas. Number one, prevention, giving people an idea how to prevent dental disease and how to take care of the teeth once we fix them. And number two, patient education is mandatory for consent. However, patient education is not mandatory for inspiration. And what I want to do is inspire people. I don't want to educate them into being inspired. I want to just inspire them. In two ways I'm going to do that. I'm going to show them results similar to theirs. And there's a lot of really cool scanning software programs that will let you do that now. I'm going to show them before and after photos of patients similar to them. And I've got a whole dialogue built around that, Lisa. You'd really like that. And also, the second way is storytelling, telling the stories of other patients. So instead of me getting into details about how I'm going to open the vertical dimension so I can improve the crown, the clinical crown length of a posterior teeth to make sure that the crowns have enough primary retention, instead of getting into that conversation, I can talk about the patient who had a case very similar to theirs and inspire them. Ultimately, the five preceding emotional outcomes, likability, empathy, advocacy, hope, and inspiration, those accumulate and they aggregate into the experience of confidence. Patients need to be confident about two things. Number one, are your treatment recommendations, are they going to meet their needs? Are your treatment recommendations going to meet their behavioral outcomes? And number two, do they have confidence in you as the provider? And by providing emotional momentum, we've made it easy for patients to make that decision. We want to build confidence in patients to, even in the highly likely event, Lisa, you can do all of this perfectly, and the patient still might not be ready for care. Why? Because none of this changes their fit issue. right? They still got kids in school. They still are between jobs. They still have all these life circumstances. But we want to give them confidence enough so when they do become ready, they'll return to you. Okay. And ultimately, we're going to talk about patient loyalty, but that's the last topic that I want to talk about, is about how do you retain patients in your practice who are not ready for care? And that's ultimately, loyalty is really the source of all things that are good that come from dentistry. Patients believing in you and staying in your practice. So the second piece on my list, as far as how to help dentists do more of the dentistry you love, is think about the new patient experience for what it really is. It's the experience of the new patient, not the processes. You can perform the processes perfectly, but if they're uninspired, it comes across as very ordinary and very transactional. Make sense, Lisa?
Yep. This could apply to a lot of things. It's building the emotional bank account.
You got it. You
Yeah,
got it.
And I do like the part of qualifying the patient without asking permission. Do I have permission to tell you how much this costs, right? But to
Right.
qualifying them through getting them prepared for the money conversation. I've seen so much momentum in an emotional bank account. I call it emotional bank account momentum.
Sure.
And they get to the end, the last 5%, and they drop the price. And after the blood leaves the body, after the facial expressions, after the shock, the chance to go back to zero is extremely almost impossible, I would say.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? So it's giving them,
it's that whole sticker shock thing. I mean, what is sticker shock? It's the unexpected high price. And the key word there is unexpected, right? It's the unexpected. And if you can remove that surprise element, it does two things. Number one, it helps diminish the impact of sticker shock. And number two, it heightens your sense of accuracy. You see, sticker shock is inevitable. Losing patients from it, Lisa, is not. And the way you eliminate losing patients is you don't shock them. Don't shock them. Reveal it early. And the way you do that, the way I've done it is simply, Lisa, is, most of my patients are concerned about the cost and the time and treatment. Is this something that you'd want to talk about now? 99% of the time, patient's going to say yes. What better conversation to have during a new patient appointment? If they buy a house, they can go online. They can see how much the house costs. Cars have stickers on them. They go to the store, price tags. People are more comfortable talking about money than they are about central correlation occlusion. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.